to partake in presenting when Carter asked me to come and help him, or when Reagan asked me to come, or when the Bushes asked me to come, or when Obama asked me to come and help them during the campaign, when Clinton asked me, when Bernie asked me to come. I could not do it because I stand true to one thing: we must vote, period. And I don't care who you vote for, even though I do. It's up to you to use that vote. So that's why it gives me such pleasure and honor to be asked by Bernie to be here today, to say thank you to him on behalf of LULAC for the work that he's done for all of our people, not only us, Latinos, but for the entire country, as one of the most inspirational politicians that has come up in recent memory. No one has done more to really bring out the young voters than this one single human being. I say to this man from the bottom of my heart, you are the reason we have hope. Ladies and gentlemen, Bernie Sanders.
Edward, thank you so much for that very generous introduction. Let me thank Roger Rocha, the president of LULAC, and Brent Wilkes for inviting me to be with you this afternoon. Today I want to briefly chat about three major issues facing our country: the need for comprehensive immigration reform, the need for an economy that works for all of us and not just the 1%, and the need to fix a criminal justice system that is severely broken. For the past 15 months, I have had the honor of traveling all across our country and talking to immigrant families, and particularly Latino immigrant families. And I have been profoundly moved and struck by the fear and sadness that grips so many in the Latino family. That fear is the fear that at any moment a member of a family can be scooped up in an immigration raid and sent out of the country and be deported. I have spoken with many children who have told me with tears streaming down their face that every day when they go to school, they are afraid that one of their parents may not be there at home when they return from school. I have seen the sadness of families torn asunder, fathers or mothers or both sent out of the country, having to leave their minor children with relatives or guardians here in the United States. A U.S. service member, an active duty U.S. service member, told me about his spouse, his wife, who was deported while he was serving the United States military. A 12-year-old boy talked to me about the need, his desire to be reunited with his mom. Let me be very clear. It is wrong, it is immoral, it is unjust to see that situation continue. And together we have got to change that. I myself know something about immigration. I am the son of an immigrant who came to this country at the age of 17. When my father came here, he had no money and he could not speak a word of English. I grew up in a largely immigrant community in Brooklyn, New York, so I have some understanding of the immigrants' experience. My father came to this country for the same reason that so many people did and still do come to this country today, to create a better life for themselves and for their families. My father's story, my story, the modern immigrant story, is the story of America, and it is a story that must be celebrated. Most of us, I would hope all of us, are appalled by the divisive, bigoted, and xenophobic comments of people like Donald Trump. His slander, his lies about the Latino community are unacceptable. His labeling of Mexicans as rapists and criminals repulses all Americans of goodwill. This kind of rhetoric and the policies built on that ugliness must be rejected. And I intend to do everything I can to make certain that Donald Trump does not become the next president of the United States. The job of the next president in these very difficult times is to bring the American people together, not separate us. Pope Francis has said that we should be building more bridges, not more walls, and we should treat our fellow human beings with dignity and respect. Pope Francis is right. Donald Trump is wrong. We don't need Donald Trump's wall and barbed wire. We need to fix our broken immigration system. The reality is that every single day, today, tomorrow, and the day after, undocumented people are being exploited on their jobs because they cannot stand up for their rights. Undocumented workers are being paid wages that are illegal. They are being overworked, and they are not getting the paychecks they are entitled to. That is unacceptable. Our immigration policy must be about making sure that every worker in this country has a legal right to stand on. And if the Republicans in Congress continue to obstruct, the next president of the United States has got to use all of the executive powers of the presidency to extend legal protections to everyone we can. We need to end the current deportation machine that exists in the United States that is dividing so many families and sowing so much fear. The rounding up of families that happened around Christmas time and continues to happen must end. And that means we need to provide temporary protected status to Central American families and children. In my view, here in the United States, we must always protect vulnerable people, especially children who come to our border to escape the unspeakable violence that exists in many regions of Latin America. Let us not forget that those children who arrived at our border to escape drug gang violence in places like Honduras and other Central American countries are in desperate need of assistance. We cannot turn our backs on those children. We need to reunite spouses who have been separated by deportation. We need to reunite children with their parents. We need to make sure that we have an immigration policy that is based on the best values of the United States of America. Over the past several weeks, Secretary Clinton's campaign and my campaign have been working together to write what I believe is the most progressive platform in the history of the Democratic Party. Let me just briefly tell you some of what is in that platform approved in Orlando last week. The Democratic platform calls for a pathway to citizenship for 11 million aspiring Americans. That platform calls for Democrats to build upon President Obama's executive actions on DACA and DAPA to include the parents of dreamers. That document calls on Democrats to fight to end family detention. It says that the Democratic Party will fight to end the disastrous 3-year, 10-year, and permanent bars. It says that we will fight to ensure that all Americans, regardless of immigration status, must have access to quality health care. That means expanding community health centers, allowing all families to buy into the Affordable Care Act exchanges, and supporting the rights of states to open their public health insurance programs to all people. The Democratic platform calls for an end to private prisons and private detention centers. Private corporations should not be making a profit from locking up immigrant families and children. And the Democratic platform makes it clear that Democrats will fight to end inhumane deportation raids and roundups and eliminate all arbitrary deportation programs. So the overall issue of immigration reform is an issue that the Congress must address. If the Congress does not address it, the next president must use all of the executive powers available to, in fact, make that happen. But the crises that we face today deal not just with immigration. They deal with an economy which, for the last 40 years, has seen the middle class of this country shrink and shrink and shrink, has allowed today 47 million Americans to live in poverty, and has today created a situation where almost all of the new wealth and income being created is going to the top 1%. In my view, and we have got to be honest about it, some of you may agree with me, some of you may not, but I think we have got to put the issue of income and wealth inequality squarely on the table and make it clear that something is profoundly wrong when the top 0.1% today owns as much wealth as the bottom 90%. There is something profoundly wrong when the 20, that's all, 20 wealthiest people in this country own more wealth than the bottom half of America, 150 million people. There is something profoundly wrong when 58% of all new income generated today is going to the top 1%. So what we have in a broad sense is an economy where most people are working longer hours for lower wages. An economy in which the United States has the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. A nation in which millions of senior citizens are trying to get by on $10,000, $11,000 a year Social Security, and nobody can get by on $10,000 or $11,000 a year Social Security. What we have today is a rigged economy, an economy in which millionaire hedge fund managers pay an effective tax rate lower than middle-class workers. We have an economy in which profitable corporations making billions of dollars a year in profit can stash their profits in the Cayman Islands and in other tax havens and not pay one nickel in a given year in federal income taxes. We need to create an economy that works for all people, not just wealthy campaign contributors. Now, what does that mean? What does it mean? It means that we need to understand that the current federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour is a starvation wage. That minimum wage, in my view, should be raised to $15 an hour. It means that we need pay equity for women in this country. Nationally, women earn about 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. Hispanic women make 55 cents on the dollar compared to men. That is wrong, and together we will change that. We have got to understand that real unemployment today is not what you see on the front pages of the papers every month. Official unemployment is around 5%, but that number does not include Americans who have given up looking for work or are working part-time when they want to work full-time. Real unemployment in this country is close to 10%, and in communities throughout America, that number is significantly higher. And that is why, in my view, we need a massive federal jobs program, rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure to put millions of Americans back to work. Every person in this room, and in fact every American, should be embarrassed by the fact that our nation has more people in jail than any other country on earth. China is a communist authoritarian country which does not tolerate dissent particularly well. They have 4 times our population. We have more people in jail than China does. We have 2.2 million people in jail. We are spending $80 billion a year to lock people up at the local, state, and federal level. And as all of you know, the people in jail today are disproportionately African American, Latino, and Native Americans. Together, we are going to end that disgrace, and together we are going to bring about major reforms in our criminal justice system. It is no secret, and one does not have to be a PhD in sociology to figure out that when you have youth unemployment in communities around this country of 30, 40, or 50%, when you have kids hanging out on street corners who are not in school, who have no jobs, many of those young people will do destructive and self-destructive things. It seems to me to be eminently sensible from both a humanity point of view, a humane point of view, plus a financial point of view, to invest in our young people, to invest in jobs and education, not jails and incarceration. And when people do serve time in jail, we have got to make certain that when they get out of jail, there are opportunities for them in terms of jobs and housing and education so they can be reintegrated into civil society and not end up back in jail again. This country faces enormous problems. I've touched on just a few of them. Immigration reform, a broken criminal justice system, an economy that continues to see the middle class shrinking. We have a crisis in climate change. 28 million of our people have no health insurance. Many more are underinsured. Hundreds of thousands of bright young people, including many Latino youth, are unable to afford to go to college, and others are coming out of school deeply in debt. And all of this is happening in the richest country in the history of the world, which is what we are today. Our job is to stand up. Our job is to fight back. Our job is not to allow anybody to divide us up. Our strength and this is not rhetoric, this is reality. Our strength and what makes this country so unique is, in fact, our diversity. And when we do not allow demagogues to divide us up, but when we come together as black and white and Latino and Asian American and Native American, when all of our people come together, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish. I thank LULAC for all of the work that you have done for so many years, and I look forward to continue working with you. Thank you all very much.